Sorry, where's the link?
It's the same one.
Hey, this is super random, Rod. Rod, I have a super random question.
We're recording, so is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. In level down, is there any reason to not? So I'm storing CIDs as keys. Should I use binary or should I use strings and just suffer the conversion? Because I know that some of the level downs don't actually support very good string or binary keys. I'm using whatever the default one code that comes with level is.
I think they all support binary now. There was a thing recently about mem down, and I can't remember how it was resolved, changing the mem down encoding defaults, but I think they all support binary.
Okay. Okay.
Cool. Then welcome everyone to this week's meeting. It's December 9th, 2019. It's the IPLD weekly sync call. We go through our updates and then discuss any open issues we might have. And let's see. First on my list is Eric. It's the only on the list.
Well, the rest of you better type fast because my update is very short and sweet this time. Because I finally shipped the written form of the documents that I've been alluding to for a while in my discovery process around memory characteristics and like what are we going to do about the node builder interface. So this is a problem space that's been bugging me for a while now because it's got lots of trade-offs in it that are possibly like, there might well be no, it might turn into one of those choose three. No, there's three choices and you can only choose two things. And that's documented now. There's a README about the memory layout and there's a couple of different experiments for alternative interfaces to node builder, which are certainly not exhaustive, but there's more than one now. So to go forward, I'm really gonna hope somebody can sink some time into reviewing that with me because it's a set of choices that's really, really central. And I want the confidence of more than one pair of eyes on it before I invest into the next round of code after this. This is a bunch of stuff that has to be hammered out before I can get back to work on doing more code gen because of course the code gen will be spitting out a bunch of things that comply with this. And writing all of that code and then changing this interface would be agonizing. So this is kind of a blocker now. And that's it. That's my big step.
Cool, thank you. So I don't have any updates, any IPLD related ones, because I work on Filecoin stuff currently. Then next on the list is Rod. Can you give us the update, please?
Yes, so mine's been a scattershot yet again. So I think there's more than this, but off the top of my head right now, I had this list in my head yesterday and it's just, I feel like too rushed this morning. The main things are been doing some work for archive formats. So zipcar, which was my zip archive format, that was originally done for small data sets mainly for test fixtures. That was the original intention, but I've been working on making it so that it can deal with large data sets. So there's streaming interfaces for it. That's only started that work. It's not finished, but it's on the way. And there's a pull request in the JavaScript version. Actually, I'll put a link in there. Car file, there's been some activity around car files. So I did up a Go car example that builds car files using the existing car file Go car library that Filecoin uses. So that's just some Go example stuff. And it uses, I put in some IPLD prime work in there just to do some dog fooding, but also to encourage people that are looking at doing this stuff new, so writing new code around it, to consider using IPLD Prime. So that's that. There's more work to go in there, I think, around making car files more accessible. Also was back onto Vector, aka Charray, which I'm going to put it in brackets here. It's basically the same thing. I wrote a small IPLD front end to the algorithmic library. Sorry, IA, not IA map, IA vector was the name of the library that implements the algorithm. So there's now a nice little JavaScript IPLD front end for it to use, and Michael's been consuming that. And so the week ahead is a bit more of that collection of things. Lots of IPLDing and some of the bits behind the scenes to bundle these things. And also on the horizon, I think is we're going to need soon some selector work in JavaScript. So I think Michael and I have been talking a bit about getting to implementing some basic selectors, and maybe instead of, because I think both of us have actually implemented our own little mini selector things, just because like you want a DAG and you want to say, okay, I want all of the DAG. So you make a little library that'll do, or a little bit of code that'll do that. But it's like we keep on reaching towards selectors, and so I think maybe we need to start actually implementing JavaScript selectors for IPLD in a separate library that you can then just call and say, here's a DAG. And I noticed that when I was doing the car stuff, the Go car library depends on DAG service, which so you get this big stack. You get data store, block service, DAG service, just to write a car file, and that stack is just to slurp out the blocks from the data store. So the data store is in there, key value store, but it has to go through all these layers because it wants to get to DAG service, which is the thing that will do, the current style of DAG walking. So it uses that to say, get me all the blocks for this DAG. And so was also thinking about how that could be replaced with IPLD Prime and selectors, but I didn't go too far down that rabbit hole, but I think we can do something better in JavaScript, at least, since we have so much greenfield there. So that's my thinking at the moment. And I mentioned also I'll be away from the 17th, that's next week. So I'll be here for the meeting next week, but I'm off on a family holiday from the 17th. That's me.
Hey, I'm up. Just to iterate on what Rod said, a couple things. So I'll be around, but I'm basically off the week of this is the last week of this. Oh man, let me pull up the calendar. I need like real dates. Okay. Yeah, the week of the 23rd through the 5th is when I have to take some time off because my daycare provider's out. But there's so much work to be done on this data set stuff that I'll probably still work through a lot of that time. Okay, what did I do? A bunch of stuff. Oh, I lost the dumb window. Oh, because okay, every app that embeds Safari in it should die in a fire. Nobody ever wants that. They just want you to open the thing in Safari. Okay. All right, so did some more iteration on the data schema based on the latest round of feedback. So a bunch of things have changed there. I need to go and update the implementation to use that. And then I'm also gonna have to do some work in the type generation to support it because I didn't do tuple representations before. So I need to go and do that work. Last week I spoke about Reg at Waffle.js. It went really well. People are very into it. One thing that I kind of clicked on in the last month is that because people don't know anything about DAGs, like regular people, the best way to describe it is just say like, hey, Git is like really good at sync. You know how Git's good at sync? It's because of this thing. And then you just show your thing with that feature, and then they go, oh, I see. It uses the same magic that Git uses that I don't understand. That's the trick. So if you ever need to talk about this to people that don't know tags, there's a good trick. Yeah, working on parsing like a lot of different data sets in the IPLD right now. And part of that work, I wrote a generic batch mutex for working with data stores that can do efficient batch operations, essentially. I'm writing a generic graph traverser right now as well, because we have this thing where we have an intermediary store, and then I need to pull all of that out and spit it out into a zipcar file. So it's a generic graph traverser, and also writing a quick generic level DB block store, because I filled up my disk with garbage data, and then it was too slow to do anything when you have a single directory in Linux with over 1 million files. So fixing that. And then, yeah, it turns out that I'm going to have to use the Unix SB2 stuff pretty soon in some of this data parsing. So we need another round of iteration and feedback on the Unix SB2 spec. In particular, just the directory and file structure stuff. The attributes are not going to be used right now. So a lot of the bike shedding that we're going to do there, and I expect a lot of bike shedding, we don't need to worry about quite yet, because I'm not going to be storing any file attributes. So, and that's it for me.
Unless the bike shedding results in mandatory attributes.
Yeah, no. No, I'm just gonna say no on that. It's an optional field. That's staying there. Oh, and then with what Rod said, yeah, I have like, I think in 2 different places I have like sort of a partial selector-y thing. And all of these little things that we've had to implement are just because like it's really impossible to do a read interface without some kind of like, you know, path-based pattern matching thing. So we keep writing these little bits, or we know where these little bits could really solve things. So I think that at some point we just need to tally them all up and then make that the kind of low bar of like the proof of concept for a spec on the user-facing syntax for selectors and how that turns into the parse form, and then a really basic sort of parser generator library. All that. Yeah, that's all for me.
Okay, I have a comment. Then I start with a comment for Michael. I wouldn't go into the user-facing syntax rather soon. I would rather basically pass in the structure that you have. Basically, what we do in Go currently, that you just pass it.
No,
okay.
It's too hard. It's too hard to construct those giant objects. If I wanted to construct those giant objects, like that's what I'd already be doing. The fact that we keep writing these like little hacky slash syntax things means that like it's just too annoying to create those when we need to like do a bunch of read operations on data really quickly. We don't have to spec out the syntax for everything. We don't even have to spec out the syntax for all of the things that we have parse forms for. We just need to spec out the syntax for the really basic thing, like slashes for properties and maybe like a star matching thing. We don't need to get into like how the recursive matching stuff looks in that syntax quite yet. That's going to take forever.
Okay. Yeah, okay, cool. And I have a question for Rod about the zipcar and car stuff, because like, so is the plan to basically have both kind of supporting the same thing, or is it the plan that zipcar replaces car, or like, yeah?
So I mean, I'm still sort of befuddled by car and the fact that it exists, but I don't think that I can impact its existence. So it's not going away, and apparently it's integral to Filecoin. So Filecoin apparently stores all of its sectors are filled with car files. So that's its storage mechanism. So car files are a thing; they're not going away. We're probably going to have to put a multi-codec entry in for car files to be able to reference them. And so car files are locked in. And I think I've actually been thinking this week that it's probably time to write a spec for it. Zipcar, I personally think, is just much more convenient, and you get compression, you get into a format that's well known. And the main reason I wrote Zipcar was for test fixtures to be able to share between JavaScript and Go. And they're just easy to move around and implement in the browser even. So I think spec for both of those would be good, and then you just use the one that is appropriate for your use case. So for this data set work, for instance, the option is to store things in big zip car files, but then slice them up into small car files. So that's another thing with selectors that we need to think about doing, which is how to take a large data set and slice them into smaller car files and have a data set spanning many car files. So yeah, there's lots of interesting stuff there.
Okay.
Yeah, so the state of the car file stuff is that like there isn't a spec, there's an implementation in Go, and like it could change. So the fact that that's the case and that we have to generate data, we want something like a little bit more stable that we know won't change unless we change it, as like an intermediary format. Also, as far as I know, the car file format does not have compression. And so when we're working with these really large data sets that we want to send around, compression might actually help us. And we could write a really small utility to just convert a zip car file to a car file if it's smaller to push around the zip car file for a while. So we're sort of seeing where this is all going to land. But like zipcar will not be integrated in the Filecoin. There's no plan for that. But as far as like the data that we're outputting, it's a little bit nicer for us to deal with this format in the interim, especially because we know that it's not a moving target unless we decide to change it.
Yeah, and if the interfaces are consistent as well, it's really just an archive format. You just choose an archive format and you should be able to convert between them. You should be able to export them into a data store, which might be LevelDB or file system or S3. Those things already exist. So you should be able to just spit them between each other.
Yeah, I have one more question about the zip file, because I just remember vaguely that you were also mentioning about like basically that you're going for a zip file and not for gzip tar files and so on, because it's easier, or like from your experience basically. And I wonder, because like I only remember that from the Geo community, people complain about zip files because is there a problem with streaming or something, or that you can uncompress them only when you fully retrieve them or something? Or
that could, yeah, that's probably an issue about the fact that you need that the metadata is at the end of the file, and that would make that tricky. Yeah.
Wait, when you're talking about zipcar, you're talking about actual zip. You're not talking about gzip or stream compression.
Yeah, actual zip.
Yeah, actual zip.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's
well,
suboptimal.
gzip doesn't have files in it, so like file name. You need to do the car first for that, yeah.
Right, but you have to do the car anyway, and you have to do the traversal and so on and so forth, which can only work on the uncompressed stream anyway. Then just treat them as a stream and compress, basically just like tar.
Yeah. So basically a quick story from the Geo world about zip files and gzip tar files. So the European Space Agency is using zip files, and the NASA is using tar gzip files. And the problem is you get like huge satellite imagery, and for the zip files you need the full file and extract it and get it out somehow. And on the NASA stuff, you can basically just more or less directly, or basically extract the first part and then go directly to the image and get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically for those people say like using a zip file it was a bad idea, and they have no idea why they use this. It's a background basically. So yeah.
I mean, for what we're doing right now, because it's just an intermediary format, it's not a big deal. Like you're always going to have the whole thing, but yeah, noted for future cases. One thing that actually maybe Volker, you could look into this, because you're sort of you're like around this area anyway. We've been talking about putting an entry in the multi-codec table for car files. Apparently car files can reference multiple root nodes, in which case I don't know how the traversal would work if you were given a CID with that multi-codec. Like it's not a very good multi-codec prefix if that's the case. That means it's effectively not a valid block format. It's something else.
I didn't wait, like but wouldn't you then basically have a CID that then points to those, like to an array of CIDs or something?
Essentially, that would essentially be what it is, because it's it's the header of the car format that you hash, and that's what would go into the CID, and that hash would include the roots that are in the header.
But if there's multiple roots, how does the traversal work, right? Like, so in every other block format, I give you a CID, I get back a decoded object. There's a known root. If there's just if there's potentially multiple roots, how does that decode work? Like, what does that look like on the other side?
Well, it's just an array of things. So it's like
an array of what though?
Of CIDs.
An array of CIDs, but the data is in the car file though. Like the thing that I get back has the data inside of it. So it shouldn't just be the CIDs. And are they just ordered? Are they named? Like if there's just one, is it the root?
You get back a header, and the header is whatever you like. So it could be like like for example, in Bitcoin, the header contains the pointer to the previous thing and the tree state or whatever, and there it would be just pointers to all those things. And then of course with the multi-coding, you know how to decode the header, and the header could be
Okay. So a car file only has one header, and then that header may have multiple roots in it, as well as the metadata, is what you're saying.
This is what I would say. Like,
so,
okay.
Is car file kind of like a git commit message, more or less?
No, I mean it's a full file format.
No. I mean commit message, like a git commit block. That it has the commit, the date, stuff like that, and then points at trees.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, sounds like it.
I would say it's more like a blockchain header.
Yeah, a blockchain header that bundles up the hash of the. It's the Merkle root of what the header points to.
So just many steps. It is unclear to me when or why car files would have become a block format or something that we give a multi-codec. I don't think that makes anybody's life easier. I don't know why we would do that.
So the suggestion is that, because we need to split up data sets across many car files, we have to then build a Merkle tree of car files. So you have like a root car file that refers to like a data set you enter at one place, but then you go into that car file and then it contains references to all these other car files. And you've got to traverse through them to get to your raw data.
But isn't this what an IPLD link is exactly?
Sort of,
yes,
but there's this
the
weird
link, the idea is you've got to, the link should tell you where the thing would be. So, okay, I want this part of my graph. Okay, but where is that?
What the thing is, as far as I can figure, car files and all of this stuff should be a transport layer thing.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, like here's the weirdness, right? If you put it in the multi-codec table, then what you're going to get back from it is just the header, and the header is just going to have references to it'll have CID references into roots that are stored inside of that car file. So there's going to have to be some kind of storage / transport layer mechanism that says, oh, I just traversed through a car reference. I need to start pulling more data out of that car file now, and that kind of violates the entire layering stuff that we've been setting up for quite a while. So it actually is unclear to me why they would need something in the multi-codec table, but this is what Juan asked for. So we need to. So if we're gonna unwind this and ask these questions and try to figure this out, then we need to go back a bit. Also, I think one of the reasons why, at least Stephen wanted to have a multi-codec prefix is as a versioning mechanism as well. So that the file format, so the format can change easily later. But yeah,
but wouldn't be the header just CBOR probably, and then the codec would be just stag CBOR?
Yes, that would be a way to get that out. But
and then you don't have a we always say that multi-codecs are not
Here's the thing, Volker. The hash is not the hash of the header. The hash is the hash of the entire car file.
Oh, yeah. I thought it's the hash. Oh, but why?
I thought it was just the header.
No, it's the whole car file.
But it doesn't make sense because the whole point of a Merkle tree is that you don't need to hash the whole thing, but you only need to hash the header.
I mean,
of
that's what it was when it was explained to me in a deck that I could probably not find. So who knows?
Well, and the other thing is that Filecoin. Oh, sorry, Peter.
No, it's all good. It actually sounds to me like basically what they're doing, they're hedging their velocity on this thing, basically introducing a layer of interaction that would not be necessary at all if there wasn't the time pressure. So right now they're basically coupling their work from what you guys are doing, so you don't have to rush anything out, and they can basically have a versioned one hop that points at whatever you're currently have ready. And since they have the interaction anyway, they might as well optimize by having the hashes of the extra stuff, of the entire tree and so on and so forth. That's what it sounds to me like, just by.
The other thing is that I don't think Filecoin stores the. I don't think it. I think it's ambivalent about what the header contains. It just knows what the car files it contains, and it's got their CIDs, whatever that is. And so, if you want to say like the next thing is in this car file, you need to be able to refer to that car file, not just the root that's in the car file.
Yeah. Given that they don't have a multi-codec prefix yet, I'm pretty sure that inside the chain, they're just looking at the hash of the car file as a multi-hash, not as a CID. I'd be surprised if they had like created something in the multi-codec table and not actually sent a PR or anything on it. And also, like, the reason why it needs to be the hash of the entire file is because the car file is not just the header. Like, you can't just move around the header. You have to move around all the data. And so it needs to be the hash of all the data. And in fact, it could be an incomplete tree in the car file as well. Just FYI.
So yeah, well, this now raises, because I questioned in the beginning why they constructed car files the way they did. So basically, the code that exists now doesn't let you create a car file without giving it access to the entire DAG. So you started a root, and it then determines what goes into the car file, and that would probably be why, because they want to ensure that they get a complete DAG for that root.
Well, not only that, also to prove that you had all the data.
So then if you take a hash of the header, then you know that you should be able to know that the rest of it contains what the header is hashing.
That at the time of generating the car, there was access to the entire data set.
Yeah, but a car file could have an incomplete graph in it. So if it has an incomplete graph, then you need the hash of the entire car file in order to understand, like, no, I copied all of the data that you told me to store. You didn't tell me to store the whole graph, though.
I think, but the current code shouldn't allow for incomplete DAGs.
It has to. Because you're gonna have data that's just referenced like on the internet somewhere.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You're gonna have data that's referenced in other car files. Like, I mean.
But if it's just links, like if you.
Yeah. I mean, but like, how do you know where it's supposed to stop and when it's supposed to start, right?
What are the boundaries of it? Yeah, you're right.
All right, like the boundary of it is literally the car file, and then the car file is what you create the contract on. So
you basically don't know if you're storing somebody's data or you're storing somebody's bookmarks, more or less.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
Well, I mean, somebody might be paying just to store the bookmarks, so
Okay, so I put some cliff notes in the document saying, we have lots of questions about what the vision and purpose of car files are, because it does not seem like 100% aligned, and it definitely seems to have attributes that are not the same as any other codec to date. So there are serious questions.
Right, so the fact that there hasn't been a PR to put anything in the multi-codec table makes me think that this is something that came up very recently and is not all that well thought out.
Good. I agree with that statement right there.
Well, the other thing might be that there might actually be no expectation for this structure to be representable in IPLD. It might not be. It might not be self-hosting.
But we have to be able to represent large data sets across fragmented sectors. So they can only be the maximum size of the sector. So if we're going to span it, then there needs to be some way of being able to say, like, I mean, maybe Filecoin becomes the transport literally, and you can say, I want this route. Where is it?
Yeah, but we already have that. Go ahead.
No. Like, so we store the reference to the car file. We just don't store it as a CID, right? So we take the multi-hash of the car file and we say like, hey, this data is over here, and like, you know, here's like the CID that I care about that is located inside of this car file, and then here's the hash of the car file. So we put those two pieces of data together, but we don't have a CID for the car file itself, because the car file itself is like not actually like it won't give us a block back that we can traverse through.
But the whole point of multi-codec is that you should be able to say, I have a hash of a thing. What is the thing? Oh, it's a car file.
But thing there. So the idea of multi-codec in every example we have so far is the thing is going to give you an IPLD node at the data model level.
Block. Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah, block. But then like it's either a raw block or something that goes to the data model.
So the header is what you should get back, which has got your roots. So you should be able to say, go there, get me my roots.
There's no other format though where the hash is not the hash of the data itself. Because this is the thing, like it's not the hash of the header, it's the hash of the whole thing. So what you're going to say is that this block data that gives you back this thing is actually not the hash of the CID that you asked for. Like that's just like not, that breaks everything actually. Like now that I think about it.
Well, it's the same as the blockchain formats. It's the same as Bitcoin and Zcash, where it's the hash of the header. You don't get the hash of the transactions as well. That's included. It's part of the Merkle root. So you say, here's my a CID to a blockchain block, a Bitcoin block. That's the header.
Think about it this way, Ron. Like if you have a block store and all you're storing in it is the things that get hashed by the data that goes into it, you could put the header in there, but the header is going to have a different CID and a different hash than the hash of the car file itself. And like what we're really talking about here is like basically a content discovery mechanism. You need the hash of the car file to go get the data out of Filecoin. So that data is like useful. So it needs to go somewhere so that you can go and retrieve it later. But that data doesn't really belong as like an IPLD link because it's not a link to another block. It's actually like information in the network. It's the same as saying, it's literally the same as saying, like this CID, go and grab it from this URL. Like there's a block store at this URL to go get this data from. If you don't have it, like go get it from there. And it's the same thing with the car file, right? Like in fact, say somebody takes a car file, they parse it on all the whole graph into a block store. If you just have the CID for the data that was inside of it, that's all that you need. You don't even care about the car file hash anymore, right? Like you're just gonna pull that out of your block store and traverse right into it. The car file hash is only useful to go and get the data if you don't have it, and you need to know that it's for a car file in the Filecoin network.
I think we need clarity on how Filecoin indexes car files. So is it truly the hash of the whole file, or does it have some other indexing mechanism? I bet you it's something odd.
Actually, what Michael is describing, this almost sounds like a magnet link. Here is the thing you're trying to find, and here are the places where you should go and check for it. Now, what Rad is saying is also true, though. This thing has to have, in addition to here's the thing that you're looking for, it has to have its own CID as well, because otherwise you're not going to be able to pull it from DHT, because nothing will relay data that does not correspond to its own hash.
Car files aren't in the DHT.
So it only has two IDs.
Car files are not in the DHT. Like there is a separate registry of people storing car files, and you have to go and talk to those people specifically. And
it's
like
a hash table of sorts.
Right, but it's a separate one. So okay, so it's almost like separate. Yeah. So it's almost like essentially you go to Pirate Bay, you go to Magnet Link, you go get the Magnet Link stuff. The car file is the Magnet Link, and the Pirate Bay is whatever else registered there is.
So if we have a data set that's 2 terabytes, and I want to get to a file within that data set, and it's stored down a hierarchy of 3 layers of car files, that's what I want to do. I want to start at the top car file because I have a reference to that car file. That's the root of my data set. I want to be able to navigate all the way down through some directory structure that is a chain that then jumps between car files. How is that going to work?
Are car files linkable?
You probably don't want to do that. Like this is what we need to talk
so
about.
then you have to extract the whole 2 terabytes in order to look at one file.
No, well, like, that's the thing though, is like if you want to get the data, you can really only get the whole car file like out of the network. So that's why you don't want to do this. Like when you construct,
but they're a maximum of 32 gigs.
Yes,
So they have to.
Yes. So you have to be really smart about how you create the root. So when you create the root car file that references all the other car files, you want it to just be 1 layer of depth. You don't want it to be 3 layers of depth. So you want to construct each of the car files so that they can all point up to the right roots, and then you just have 1 car file full of roots. I have a very hard time thinking that we are going to have like a HAMT that is larger than 32 gigabytes that is just the metadata pointing to other things in their car files, right? Like we can definitely get like an unbelievable amount of data reference, like by whatever string value that you care about inside of 1 car file as the root, and then only have 1 layer of depth from there. We really don't want to have multiple layers of depth. The only time you're going to have multiple layers of depth, I think, is when people start posting updates and their updates reference like previous states that go back and back and back through them.
At any rate, it seems extremely clear to me that car files are a transport level mechanism. If you are going to index into something in a large suite of these things in whatever topology it is, you're going to write a selector using IPLD selectors that look over the IPLD data model. And that's going to be on one whole set of truth things, and all of the hash validation and everything else goes on over there. And somewhat independently, if you know that this data is in a bunch of car files and that's how you want to populate your local storage upon which you're then going to evaluate the selector, then you can tell some library or program all of these things and get them. But your link loaders in the IPLD library are just going to like get stuff out of this pool. It is almost perfectly analogous to Git pack files, which also are absolutely not part of the mechanism of the hashing that is used in content addressing throughout Git. They are a transport level detail. Then
that puts a lot of burden on Filecoin to make sure that it can give us headers of everything we want. Anyway, sorry, Peter.
Yeah, so this doesn't sound as much, it basically doesn't sound like area flush selectors anymore, because essentially what you're describing with car files is literally the same situation we have right now. We have carrier blocks, which are at most 1 megabyte. You don't run selectors over them, you run the selectors over all those 1 megabyte blocks being, represented as something else, assembled after the fact that they were, put together and everything. So why would you need selectors over car files? Just like when you do, when you do git pickaxe, you do not actually look into the pack files. There is a layer that does the translation for you independently.
Yeah,
it's that translation layer we're caring about, though.
But not for selectors.
Actually, hold on. So I want to respond to this. We have to kill the call.
All right.
Okay, I have concerns that.
Sorry, we have to kill the recording. Sorry, that's what I meant, not the call.
What I'm concerned about is that they are like when we hash the car file and have a hash there, that we end up with something like IPLD, but it isn't IPLD, but some people think of it as IPLD. And then the question is, first of all, is why not using IPLD? And if not, how do we make sure that this thing is not regarded as IPLD?
Well, okay.
Because
look,
then it's super confusing. Because wait.
IPLD does not have an opinion about the network and about storage.
Because what I don't want to end up with, like another format like protocol buffers, where we have one format which is completely different from everything we have. And I fear that this happens again, that we have a new format which is completely different and doesn't work with IPLD.
I agree, but like if we go with what Eric is suggesting, we keep these separations very clear. Like we're staying out of the network and we're staying out of storage. Like car file is a storage format that then gives you a reference for a network content discovery. If we just stay out of that, we don't make it a CID, then we are like keeping the separations very intact.
And then it's actually very beneficial to have this other thing that does not look like anything that, you know, the normal Merkle tree looks like, so you cannot actually make a mistake. Just like a Git pack file does not look like anything else within the Git infrastructure at all.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
should we then perhaps like communicate it also like the same way that we say basically like car files are like Git pack files, so basically have this easy like, okay, it's like this and not like this, and like
Yeah.
because I'm really concerned because I'm really like I'm 100% sure that it comes up that those will be CIDs. I could bet on it. Like, yeah.
CID version 2.
Yeah. No, so just like okay, so who owns making sure that it's not going to the wrong direction?
You're on the Filecoin team.
Yeah. Okay, next question.
So look, there's no PR right now into the multi-codec table. So if there is, then that's where we discuss it and sort of be like, this is not analogous.
Yep.
Right.
No, but the problem is if the PR shows up, it needs to be merged within 2 days. So that's like if a PR shows up, that's too late. Like, yeah, I mean.
Okay. Well, here, Volker, like, can you just check and see if they're actually using a CID anymore or anywhere? I don't think that they are.
Okay, I mean, I can totally check the like what. Okay, yeah. So till next week, I will check like what the how the Filecoin sees those things.
Mm-hmm.
If it will be like, I'm not sure if it will be next week because well, we are pretty busy currently.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, I own asking the Filecoin team, which is probably just Jeremy, I guess, because he's the major. Oh, yeah, we'll see. Anyway, I'll make sure. Okay. I will make sure that I will find out what their plan is with the hash identifier of car files.
Yeah. I think it's just a multi-hash. Hope it's a multi-hash and not just like a chunk of binary.
Yeah, and also how do they what are all the expectations for addressing them? Because if they actually do expect to get them from the same DHT, then we have a completely different conversation.
Yeah, they don't. Like, not that.
But check that.
Yeah.
Okay, so can someone put this in the notes, please, so I don't forget, or do I have to put in the notes?
Cool. At the risk of potentially recomplicating it at the last moment, if they do want to store all of those things, but just as like a multi-codec that says raw binary, or if they somewhat wildly want to store those things inside of like a Unix MS-v2 file system tree or something, and just pass those hashes around as identifications of big blobs of data that you can have all in one, I think that's perfectly well defined, and we should let people do that. Whether or not it's a good idea is another question. It's kind of like stacking a file system on top of a file system, and like maybe that's not going to have great performance outcomes, but
I can speak to that when we turn off the recording a little bit.
But then it will be like a raw block that we already have. So it's not a new multi-codec thing.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Which is obviously what we always can do with. Okay. Okay. I will see what I will find out. Okay.
Okay. That was fun.
Yeah. I have one more small thing at the top I just want to mention because we brought it up quickly, and I'm only into the JavaScript side of things. So about IPLD in general, that Michael and I discovered basically that it makes sense that the multi-codec table, and also which we had earlier, that the storage thing should not be like, currently it's all kind of like stacked up. So we have the multi-codec and the storage and so on and things on top. But what you rather should do is those libraries like CID should be independent of the table. So we basically pass in the table. And I just wonder what the Go implementation, for example, is doing. Or like, for example, I will make also sure that the Rust implementation will just basically not have the layer, the storage layer and so on and bottom up, but basically really let you pass in something that can store things. Or basically the whole CID multi-hash stuff is basically just based on numbers and not, and you can basically can pass in your own like table kind of thing and not depend really on a fixed table that you need to ship an update and so on. But basically your top level application will have a dependency on the table and you pass it in through all the chain basically. I'm not sure if this is clear what I explained.
Yeah, well, I think Rod just asked a very similar thing in an issue on the new Go libraries. Right now, there's a de facto global table of like multi-codec to there's some code that does the thing. And it's initialized at package init time in Go, which is a choice that makes it work in a way that is free of race conditions. But it also does mean that it's a de facto global thing. So it's a little, I'm not sure if I'm pleased with the code quality of this. The reason that it's not an entirely hard-coded thing at all and uses variables is because package size minimization, like you want to be able to compile a program without dragging every multi-codec into the linking. And the reason that it's global is because surely you don't mean to register conflicting things for the same number, right? An example of another Golang ecosystem thing that uses the same kind of convention is the standard library has some image handling tools. And if you want to handle PNGs, the image package contains all of the interfaces. And then you do an import of the image PNG subpackage. And you never refer to it, you just import it so that at package initialization time, it does a similar global registration hook thing. And it works. I always found it a little magical, and I don't know if I like it as a library flavor. So that's something we might revisit. And I think that is the same question that you're asking, like, how do we store this table? If there was a way to gracefully pass it down, I would also be happy about that. But it gets a little
but like, so basically where the question comes from is in JavaScript, we have the problem that it's currently super hard to use your own table. So if you're not using the normal multi-codec table, because basically it's in all dependencies like IPLD and JS, IPF and so on, have the table bundled, and then they have different versions. And basically you end up with like problems with different versions of the table. And also if you want to pass in your own table, you would need to modify basically this module in order to get your own thing in and so on. So therefore it's like, that's it's more or less a JavaScript problem. Like it's not a, but I just wanted to basically bring it up in order, like, because there might be issues in other languages as well. This was kind of, but it seems like Go has its own way of dealing with it, and it seems to be fine because you could just import your own table.
So in JavaScript, we actually have two different use cases that we need the multi-codec table for, and they'll probably end up looking a little bit differently in both. But the common thread throughout both of them is that in the internals, whenever we work with stuff from the multi-codec table, we should use the integer. So that we don't actually need to do a table lookup, or we can always just convert the binary form to the integer, and we can always convert the integer back to binary. So unless we need to like get the string reference for something that we're talking about, we don't need the table a lot of the time. And that'll get us out of like a lot of really annoying things. The two cases are like, one is like the multi-hash stuff where we actually do need a bunch of things that we don't have implementations for. Like I need to know the string prefix for a bunch of hashes where I may not have the hashing function actually. But then for the block side, for CIDs, I don't need the names of any codecs that I don't have a decoder for. Because if you hand me a block and tell me to decode it and I don't have the decoder, that is the error, not I don't know what this table prefix should be. So they're slightly different. And so like even when we want to sort of have metadata, like in one we don't actually need metadata about things that we don't support, and the other one we do. So in one, we can kind of just build up a table from scratch as we pull in implementations of things. And for the other one, we need to pass in the table. But yeah, we really want to get away from bundling the entire multi-codec table because it's only getting bigger and it's already a pretty sizable chunk of the bundle size for a lot of those libraries.
So I don't see why we can't do the same in JavaScript and Go, which is just like what currently is in IPLD Prime is just take a thing and register it with a number. Now the table's not referenced, but it could be like the thing could know its own number. And I think it does in Go right now. The DAG-CBOR and DAG-JSON know their own numbers, but you should be able to take a thing and say, register yourself over here, or you should be able to say, I want to register this thing with this number.
It can know the string reference too. I mean, like we do that in the JavaScript side now as well. In the new codec interface, you give it the string reference.
But then you need the table if you have the string reference.
No. You give it the string reference and the integer, and then that's what it builds its internal table out of. So now it can always decode those. Now that whenever it gets a CID, and it knows which one that it needs whenever it gets a CID. And it doesn't need the table.
So no problem then. We're all done with that.
No, well, no, I mean, it's a breaking change. So like what's probably going to happen on the JavaScript side is that I have this action item at some point in 2020 to do the bare version of the block interface, which is basically a block interface without any codecs and without any hashing functions, and then make that very small, and then you add the things that you want to it. So you get the same block interface out of it as you would anywhere else, but people can really pare down the number of dependencies that they require. And then that will leave the old one alone. But there's internal changes that we'll have to do in CID too. So there's going to have to be like a bare version of CID and a bare version of multi-hashing that these all rely on. So it's going to take a little while, but it is something that we want to start moving towards. I think the main thing to just think of right now is that, like, if you're dealing with stuff if you're dealing with multi-codecs in any context, please use the integers internally, and then you won't have problems in the future when we want to get rid of the table.
All right.
So I had one more thing that I wanted to jump to provide a little more like informational linking density around from about 40 minutes ago. This came to my mind because for like context and linking for Peter, basically, because you were asking about some things about like different kinds of length delimiters and seeking and where that comes up. Something that Michael mentioned just like really fast in passing a while back was I would like to iterate on the data schema. This may not have been clear in audio, but that's a capital D data. It's a proper noun. And, you know, bike shed time, I think we should probably rename that, because that is like the least likely capital D to be obvious in audio ever. Humans talking. So data is a thing that Michael's been working on, which is describing how we should do an advanced data layout for bytes, basically. And he's been writing a schema to describe different ways we could topologically arrange that data. And the schema doesn't describe all of the code that would be used to lay it out or to read it. That's sort of, you know, that's your language specific problem. But there's a schema that he's iterating on for just saying topologically how that data would look internally. And so if you're interested in reviewing that sort of stuff to see if like the seeking makes sense, then that would be a thing to go check out.
Yeah, link it to me, please, in Slack or whatever.
Yeah. That's all.
All right. As we are already like 30 minutes over time almost, I don't see anything else on the agenda or on the notes. Then I close the meeting and say goodbye to our millions of viewers on YouTube. Goodbye, everyone.